Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin this morning on page 74. My heart is really already in this final pasuk. Va'ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon. There is this kavanah that our prayers are reaching the source, right? That it's not just aimless. And I really feel that deeply at this time of year, these last days of Elul. How can we find a way to create some focus for our prayer? A place where it can be anchored and received. That's where my heart is today. So we begin noticing how good it is to have a place to put that hope.
Tohu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael ma tohu ohalecha Yaakov We're on page 76, a prayer for the body. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human being with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh kol basar umafli la'asot. Page 78.
Amen. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi, tehorai, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Me'ata mishamra b'kirbi. One more time. Elohai, Elohai, neshama,
shenatata bi te'orai.
Baruch atah Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol b'sari.
We'll chant responsively, page 80, with the miracles of daily life. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'saviv v'nalachin ben yom uvein laila.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף כפופים.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המכין מצעדי גבר.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הנותן ליעף כוח.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir shena me'enai utenuma me'afapai.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלם אלוהים.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני ישראל.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוטר ישראל בתפארה.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
אמן.
And after saying this prayer over the study of Torah, we move into studying a little bit of Mishnah, page 88, Elu Devarim.
אלו דברים שלהם שיעור שאדם אוכל פירותיהם בעולם הזה והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא.
Eluhein, kibud avvaim, ugmilut chasadim, והשכמה בין המדרש שחרית וערבית, והכנסת אורחים וביקור חולים, והכנסת כלה ולוויית המת ועיון תפילה, והבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו, ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. Page 94.
ברוך שאמר והיה העולם
ברוך הוא,
ברוך עושה וראשית
ברוך אומר ועושה,
ברוך עזר ומקיים
ברוך מרחם על הארץ,
ברוך מרחם על הבריות,
ברוך משלם שכר טוב לרעיו,
ברוך הילד וקיים לנצח,
ברוך פודה ומציל, ברוך שמו.
ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מהולל ותשבחו.
Page 96.
מזמור שיר
יום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
מזמור שיר.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר
לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסידיך ואמונתך בלילות עלי יעזור ולנה וללה היגיון בכינון מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
We'll chant responsively, page 97. Ashrei Yoshei Beitecha, Od Yahalelucha Selah.
אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו.
Tehillah LeDavid, Aramim Eloi HaMelech, V'avarcha Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed.
בכל יום אברכך, וללה שמך לעולם ועד.
גדול אדוני ומעלה מאוד, ולגדולתו אין חקר.
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך, וגבורותיך יגידו.
הדר כבודך ודברי נפלאותיך עשיך.
ועזוז נורותיך יאמרו, וגדולתך אספחנה.
זכר רב טובך יביעו, וצדקתך ירננו.
חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדל חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ורחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכו.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל העמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעיתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראו באמת.
רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
כל הרשעים ישמיעו.
תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברכיה, מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. Page 100.
Hallelujah.
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 Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. El bikodsho. Hallelujah.
Birkia uzo. Hallelujah. Bigvurotav. Hallelujah. Kerulo. Hallelujah. 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 ביתך השופר. Hallelujah. בן ולחינו. Hallelujah. בטוב ומחול. Hallelujah. במילים ועוגב. Hallelujah. 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 בציץ לשמה. Hallelujah. בציץ לתרועת כל הנשמה. תהלליה. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Last time. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah,
We're going to rise together for the Chatzi Kaddish, page 106, as I count a minyan between our virtual and our in-person worshipers. Page 106, we rise.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה.
Amen.
למד ברכילותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובמכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו
Amen.
יש מרבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי
Amaya
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר לעולם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל שני דקודשו ברכו לעילמים כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחתה באמירן בעולמה ואמרו
Amen. Page 108.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך
Baruch Adonai Amorach Leolam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
We're seated together, a special prayer for nature, page 110.
ברוך אתה Adonai Eloheinu
מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא
את הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו, ברוך
מלך
אתה
העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום,
עושה שלום,
עושה שלום,
עושה שלום, עושה שלום, עושה שלום,
עושה שלום
ובורא את הכל,
עושה שלום ובורא את הכל.
עושה שלום. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
אהבה רבה
אותנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ויתרה, חמלת עלינו בעבור אבותינו ואימותינו, שבטחו בך, שבטחו בך, שבטחו בך, למדם חוקי חיים,
כן תכוננו תלמדנו,
המרחם רחם עלינו, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן ליבנו להבין, להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והערנו בתורתך, דבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש ולא נקלם ולא נקשר לעולם מהר, כי בשם קודשך הגדול הנורא פתחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה ישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכינו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול לסלע באמת, להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע
ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך,
ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Page 118. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם,
ונתנו
על ציצית הכנף בציל תכלת,
והיה לכם לציצית וריתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריכם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. I found myself drawn actually to the prayer on the bottom of page 119, and I want to read that now as we introduce our Mi Chamocha. Life without integrity is like loosely hanging threads, easily fraying from the main cloth. While in acts of piety, we learn to understand that every instance is like a thread raveling out of eternity to form a delicate tassel. We must not cast off the threads, but weave them into the design of an eternal fabric. Each day points to eternity. The fate of all time depends upon a single moment. Page 122. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, let's sing it out. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha netar bakodesh, nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele. בשיר החדשה שיבחו גאולים, ושירך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והיליכו, נאמרו אדוני אמרו לעולם ועד, אדוני אמרו לעולם ועד. One more time, man, yai, 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 la la, yai, 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 la la la, yai, la la.
We rise together.
בעזרת ישראל ופדחנו ממך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך את אדוני גל ישראל.
Page 124.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, ומלך חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך חוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מקיים את מטריו להושיע, מוריד הטל
מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך וכרז זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו אדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו ואבינו מלכנו ומושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם ימלוך אדוני לעולם. אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד כה לכל הנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We continue silently, either with the traditional words on the page or the words in our hearts.
So I know that our Ner Tamid community knows that I really like to repeat one word or two a lot of times. Sometimes less words, more kavanah. Sometimes that's just a thing. So lifting out two words from our hoda'ah this morning, from our gratitude prayer, we're going to just hang out with the word hatov, the good. Hatov, hatov. That's all you gotta know. Hatov, 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 hatov,
mercy boundless, source of strength and lightness, limitlessness, yes, 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 limitlessness, yes, 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 limitlessness, yes, 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 limitlessness, yes, yes, Hatov, everybody, Tov, Hatov, 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 Tov, Hatov, loving kindness, endless, goodness, mercy, boundless, source of strength and lightness, limitlessness, yes, yes, limitlessness, yes, 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 yes.
So we're going to move now into Seder Kriyat Torah. We're on page 244, and we need some honors to be given out, some participants. So anyone want to open the ark opener today? All right. We need somebody to bless our Torah today. Aliyah, anybody? Okay. And someone to lift our Torah? Okay. Wonderful.
You were officially voluntold.
Yes. Yes. I got to say, it's impressive. I think last week when you did it, Herb, you got 7 columns, maybe 6 columns. It was, yeah. So with that, we're going to rise together and page 266.
אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אבי הרחמים, היטיב ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים, כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, גדול שמו, גדול אדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחד.
So before we move around and we do a hakafah, just a note about that hakafah. I'll say this from time to time. As this service, as it goes around, we want to pay homage to the Torah, but we're going to just avoid trying to touch and do any kissing and all of that. So bow, wave, do whatever you need to do as we parade the Torah around. Right. I think we're good. Yeah.
So we're going to call our Aliyah up. Today we're going to be reading from the very beginning of Kitavo, chapter 26, verses 1 through 4. If you want to find the words, they're right up here. And for those who are joining us virtually, you can find the words on your screen very shortly. Ya'amod Mordechai
Ben Yechiel,
ben
B'Devorah.
B'Devorah L'Aliyah Torah.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam
Baruch
Va'ed.
Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'haya ki tavo el haaretz, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha, v'nachalaha v'rishta v'shavata baha, v'lakachta mirishit kol peri adama, asher tavi me'artzecha, asher Adonai noten lecha, v'samta batena, v'halakta el hamakom, asher yivchar Adonai Elohecha l'shachein shemo sham, uvata el hakohen asher Adonai b'yamim yasher yihye b'yamim hahem v'amarta elav higadati hayom l'Adonai Elohecha ki bati el haaretz asher nishba Adonai Adonai lavotenu latet lanu velakach hakohen hatene miyadecha v'hinicho lifnei mizevach Adonai Elohecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nota b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So now in the presence of our Torah, we think of those who are ill and who are in need of healing, who are in need of a complete healing of refuah shlema, of body, mind, soul, and spirit. And so, I'll grab it, I'll do it. As my eyes go around the room, I'll invite you to share names of people for whom you are thinking.
Geraldine Michelle.
As together we join in the singing of Mishabera. Source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberak imotenu, mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I'll invite us now to rise as we prepare to lift and dress our Torah.
Smechu. That's what we sing here.
Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim,
V'tagel haaretz. Yiramayam, 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 umela'o. Yiramayam, Yiramayam.
Yiramayam umelo. We can be seated together. And I'm going to call right now our clergy associate Ronnie Pressman up to chant our Haftarah this morning.
You can join me on page 254 with the Haftarah blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar binviim tovim veratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai Habocher baTorah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'inviei ha'emet batzedek. V'yanak halev goyim v'shod melachim tinaki v'yadat ki ani Adonai Moshiach v'goalech avir Yaakov tachat v'nilchoshet avi zahav v'tachad habarzel avi chesef v'tachad ha'etzim nechoshet v'tachad ha'avanim barzel v'samti fekudatek shalom v'nogesayich tzedakah lo yishama od chamas be'artzek shod v'hasever shever bigvulayich v'kara yeshua homotayich usharayich tehillah. Lo yihye lach od hashemesh leor yomam ulnoga hayared ach lo yair lach v'hayalach Adonai leor olam velo hayich letifartech. Lo ya'avo od shimechchech v'rechek lo yeasef ki Adonai yihye lach leor olam v'shamu yemei evlech ve'ameh kulam tzadikim leholam yirshu aretz netzer matai maaseh yadai lihitba'er hakaton yiyeh la'elef ve'hatzair legoy atzum. Ani Adonai bi'ita achishena. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, sadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'medaber u'mekayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah, Ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, likdusha ve'limnucha, lechavod ultifaret, al hakol, Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach, u'mevarchim otach, Yitbarach Shimcha befi kochai, Tamid leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
I'll invite us now to rise as we prepare to return our Torah to the Ark.
Shalom, Ashivenu Adonai, Elecha Menashuva, Kodesh, Kodesh Yameinu, Kodesh Yameinu,
So Shabbat Shalom. I got into an interesting discussion this week with somebody in our community. It's actually funny the way that it happened. I was explaining the book that I was working on, and I just put in a proposal, and I'm waiting, for a series of readers to read through it, and for JPS to decide whether they want to pick it up or not. But I was trying to explain the phenomenon in rabbinic literature, which is what the book is about, of choosing the pragmatic, the practical, the realistic, what will work over the ideal, which is different, by the way, than, let's say, other models in Judaism, like our prophets, who are all about the ideal, and it almost doesn't matter if people listen to them. They need to stand on a soapbox. They need to say God's word. And the value of speaking truth is, I would say, more important than the value of moving people and getting people to do what they need to. And the rabbis have a different worldview. And in order to explain that, I began to tell a story. Now, I'm not going to necessarily tell the whole story, because actually we're going to talk about that story on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. But it boils down essentially to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai sneaking out of Jerusalem and saving Judaism through a very pragmatic way of thinking. And about halfway through the story, he stops me and he says, you rabbis are so annoying. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? He says, you always have to tell a story. Can't you just tell me what the book is about without illustrating it with some kind of parable or some story? Why do you have to be so pedantic? And I thought to myself a little bit about that question, and I've been thinking about that question all week. Now, granted, he let me finish the story and he understood why I was telling it. But I have especially thought about that anecdote when I read this week's Torah portion. Because in this week's Torah portion, we together are told the story of the Jewish people. We're told that when you enter into the land, and we began to read the beginning of this, we're supposed to bring first fruits to the temple, whether it be wheat or vegetables or legitimate fruits. The first things that come to the ground end up being God's. And as we do, there's a kind of special way that we're supposed to bring it. We're not supposed to bring it with a prayer, and we're not supposed to bring it by proclaiming a law. We're supposed to bring it by telling a story. And the story begins, my father was a wandering Aramean, and then it moves forward and basically tells the history of the Jewish people, of God freeing us with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm from Egypt, bringing us into the desert and eventually into the promised land. And so one of the answers that I gave to this comment about why you rabbis always have to tell stories is actually because it's incredibly Jewish. And I want to pause for a second, and I want to invite you to think about which is more powerful to you. If the Bible, for example, gave you a series of 10 laws that follow from the fact that we were freed from Egypt, but without any context. So being told, for example, take care of the stranger, the widow, and the orphan, without following that up with the idea that you were once strangers in the land of Israel, the land of Egypt, it would actually be a much less powerful teaching. The idea that we are shaped, the idea that we are guided by stories, I would say is not only incredibly Jewish, but is also incredibly powerful. We need narratives to form our lives. Because narratives do any number of things, but one of the most important is that they can get deep into our souls. They can penetrate our kishkas. Stories, more than anything else, can touch us in an emotional way that will shape our outlook in a different way than feeling like we just want to obey law. Judaism has plenty of law, but if you think about the things that connect you to Judaism, the ideals you hold, the values that you stand for, I would say more of them are shaped by story than by legislation. The idea, by the way, that we were slaves in Egypt, that we were once wandering Arameans, is probably the reason that many of you right now are aching for Afghanistan refugees, hoping that you can figure out a way to make your mark and to help them find a place. That their kindness, for example, it's a great story, right? Many people's kindness toward Americans when we were on the ground, helping us to greet success, shouldn't be met with a feeling of fear because now there's a different regime. They shouldn't be abandoned. That story that you can tell about them is incredibly powerful. And that's part of the reason I feel like our heart aches for those who are standing outside of the airport, trying to get in, hoping for a visa to the United States. Think about any number of other reasons and things in Judaism where stories play a powerful role. One of the most important legal treatises that I ever read in the modern era was by a rabbi up in, I think in White Plains, who was writing a response to the conservative movement about why he didn't like the specific responsa or scholarly answers to legal questions that the conservative movement wrote about gay marriage and gay officiation and gay ordination. Now, for any number of years, the conservative movement, who does take Jewish law seriously, was struggling with questions around what to do with Leviticus 18:22, right? If one man lies with another man as he lies with a woman, it is an abomination. And so very carefully, many of the most important halakhic authorities in the conservative movement parsed these words carefully. They first looked at the word toeva, an abomination, to try to figure out, well, what does that actually mean? They then moved on to the question of parsing out the words to lie with, looking at whether or not there were valences of violence or hatred. They then traced the history of that law up, poking holes in the different commentators who built on that law to lead to the general sense that Judaism does not embrace loving relationships between two men and two women. And at the end, they finally settled on the question of that gay marriage and gay officiation and gay ordination were okay. But I love the response written by, it was Gordon Tucker was the rabbi. You might know his son, by the way, who's also a really important Jewish legal authority, Ethan Tucker from Hadar. Because Gordon Tucker looked at the answer and basically said, that's not the way that Jews think. Although you are correct that we make decisions based around law, at the end of the day, for this thorny question, we have to look at story. We have to look at narrative. We have to tell ourselves a story of what it means for humans to be created in God's image. We have to tell ourselves a story of human dignity leading the way because we understood what it was like to be slaves in Egypt. We have to lead a story with the story of seeking a yearning for a certain kind of redemption and acceptance, one that the Jewish people know so well, and one of alienation, which is woven into our history. And because we try to transcend that, we should transcend the alienation for those around us. And although he came to the exact same conclusion, I have to say, having read both the legal arguments and the moral narrative argument of Gordon Tucker, his answer is so much better. Because it's so much more authentic to the experience of what it means to be shaped by story, to be a Jew. One of the reasons I think that there are tragedies around the world that we care about and tragedies around the world that we don't care about is less a matter of caring about the people. I would say at the end of the day, do I care about those who live in Rwanda any different than I care about those who live in Darfur, any different than I care about those who live in certain parts of China? No. But at the end of the day, if you can tell a good story about what's going on, usually that's the reason why you care. Which unfortunately, I've been thinking about the fact that why does the world seem to care about Israel more than any other atrocity around the world? I actually think that besides the latent anti-Semitism and things like that that are undergirding a lot of the modern anti-Israel discourse, which is true, I actually think that Israel is a better story. And whether you tell that story on the right or you tell that story on the left, in a way you can make a story that you find incredibly meaningful, incredibly compelling, incredibly moving, which I think is the reason why people pay more attention. Now, the problem with stories is that they're not always nuanced. If you can tell a story in 60 seconds, if you can give an elevator pitch, then you lose all of the details, all of the realities, which is part of the reason that I think it's unfair, the stories that are often told, both on the right and on the left in Israel. But I want to challenge us to say that despite the fact that telling stories loses some of the philosophical undergirding, some of the nuance, some of the law, stories are a powerful means. It's a powerful medium in which to engage with Judaism. And that you need to find your place in the story. You need to find your voice as a storyteller. And you need to allow the stories to penetrate you. Because when you do, and you say the words, my father was a wandering Aramean, when you say the words that God took us out of Egypt with a strong hand, with an outstretched arm, then there is no way that you can ignore those truths in that story. They will inform who you are, and you will live your lives by them. Shabbat Shalom. So I'll invite us to rise as we move to page 282 for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קונים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. לך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
We're seated together. Turn to page 294 as our thoughts turn to those who we have loved and who we've lost. I know we have a few people joining us online and in person who may not have been here last night to say Kaddish for loved ones who were on this list. So I'll read the list now, and I'll invite you to rise or to put names into the chat as I read your loved one's name. Fred Abramson, Samuel Ainsfield, Leah Baum, Sylvia Billow, Andrew Bornstein, Naomi Chilton, Marie Davidson, Florence Friedman, Anne Fixel Glass, Florence Grossman, Gertrude Hogg, Sarah Holland, Arthur Jacoby, Philip Levoff, Lottie Marger, Barbara Mazur, Herbert Neifeld, Samuel Pfeffer, Marion Roth, Ruth Sandler, Edward Siegel, Helen Sloan, Howard Sweetwood, Emil Weiss, Beverly Wolfson, and Edith Yorish. And those who are in the Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning: Warren Price, uncle of Lori Price Abrams, Frances Sachs, mother of Ken Sachs, and Diana Meadow, Norma Perlman, mother of Marcia Kramer, and Linda Alexander, sister-in-law of Eleanor Sontag. I'll invite you to rise if there's anyone else that you're observing a yahrzeit for that may not have been on this list. And I'll invite you to rise if you're in your 1 year period of mourning. Page 294, we rise together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach v'yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman karib v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mebarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei l'kudashah b'rechu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Damiram v'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'arko Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'arko Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. As together we say,
Amen.
we're seated together. And just a few announcements. So tonight, 7:30, we're going to be watching such a cute movie. I love it, About Time. But it also has many of the themes that speak to the High Holy Day season, about what would you do if you could live pieces of your life over again, and what could you do if you could manipulate, slow down, speed up time. And so I'll invite you 7:30 there, and then following that, we're going to have our Slichot services. So the safe bet would be about an hour, 45 minutes or so after the program starts. We'll have a short discussion about the movie afterwards. And don't forget, tell us which services you are coming to for the High Holy Days.
Please don't forget.
Oh,
Say shalom, bimroma, uya, say shalom, aleinu, v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yal kol yoshvei tevel,
may the oneness who makes peace possible fill us with hope
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Those who are joining us virtually, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom as well.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.